The image trend EPCR is a familiar layout with all of our sections on the left-hand side and validation rules or critical required information noted in red. As a reminder, the red required fields help us to remember to fill out critical information. Some of this information is required for state reporting. Some gets audited and may pertain to provider liability if ever taken to court, and some is for billing. Regardless of the reason, if a field is marked red as critical and required, it is important to fill it out as completely and accurately as possible. The section names along the left-hand side should be self-explanatory and will have multiple subsections within them. These sections will turn to red when there's critical criteria to fill out, or they may turn to orange if there's recommended criteria to fill out. Anytime you have a red critical criteria, you can click on this exclamation point to see the validation reason behind it. The right side has multiple shortcuts that allow you to access or enter information quickly and easily without leaving the section of the form that you're working on. The naming here is also straightforward. We have a section for times where you can always add or verify your times. We have a section for mileage. We have a timeline of what's occurred. And as you enter more information, such as vital signs and treatments, those will show up here as well. Clicking this arrow will take you to that specific section of the chart. The Easy button is a shortcut with some additional options that allow you to enter information very quickly and easily. On almost every call, you can utilize the Easy button to assess the A&O status of the patient, add a GCS score, and then add a set of vitals. This will complete many of the required fields. The other thing to notice is that you have an OK button here. By pressing this, you are leaving the Easy button tool. Within that shortcut, if I were to open an A&O section, I'm able to document and add a crew member. If I do not want this to take place, I can hit cancel or delete. Once I've entered something and hit OK, it will apply to the chart. We can notice that here in our timeline that I entered this exam. And taking the arrow shortcut back will reopen that field. It's important to know that with any of these shortcuts, if you click on them, they are automatically timestamping and adding that event. So even though I may not enter information, simply scrolling through these timestamps the event for me. If I did not want one of these to apply, I do need to hit cancel. As you'll note, I did not hit cancel as I went through this vital, and I've got multiple vitals, GCS, and OPQRST because I timestamped each one of them as I pressed the button. I can simply go back to it and delete. We actually take advantage of this timestamp feature as well, most notably in our arrest shortcut. In here, we've got multiple items, such as rhythm analysis or CPR, and as you can see, those things simply timestamp, and they don't pull up any further information to add. I can say I added an IO, defib, I gave epi, and all of those are simply timestamps. And you can see that those have showed up here in the timeline, and they do require more information to be filled out, but you can do that later. Some of the most useful ones have been pinned at the top, with the Easy button being the primary shortcut to utilize on the right-hand side because it has so many additional convenient options within it. From an assessments and vitals section that allows you to enter all of your basic assessments, including strokes, FAST score, EKG or Zoll monitor, IVs, IOs, basic medications given by IV or IO, IM medications, IN medications, any others, and some basic treatments down below. The last thing to note about this right-hand side is that many of these power tools or shortcuts were created to be able to utilize more efficiency throughout the form. If you were to click on all, you will see quite a few of those that are hidden. But again, the most useful and efficient ones have been pinned to the top, so you'll always see those, and there's no need to see the rest of them. As we move down to the bottom of the form, we have a status drop-down selection, but we're going to just leave that as incomplete because even when we finish the call, which we'll show later, we won't need to change this status at all. We have a menu button. This menu button allows us to add attachments, specifically photos. This is where we can add things like photos of our EKGs, photos of face sheets, or even medication lists. Next to the menu, we have a validation score. If we click on this, we can see all the other required items that are going to show up as red and critical. It'll give some information as to why it's critical or what is required, and then the points associated with that. Clicking on any one of these arrows, just like in the timeline, will take you to that section specifically. The validation score must be 100% to completely finalize and close out the call. As we move across the top of the form, we have a save button. This allows you to manually save at that point in time. The chart does automatically back up and save on a regular basis. This is a good habit to get into before we post or transfer. Posting is new terminology for us. Posting is how we move our chart from this specific iPad to the larger image trend system. Think of this as posting to the cloud. There's two basic scenarios where we would post. One is that we're done working on this specific iPad and want the chart to be accessible from a desktop to finish at a later time. This should be rare, as most calls should be completed as soon as possible, which will likely occur on the same iPad. The other scenario is when you are completely finished and no further information will need to be added by anyone. In that instance, you can check the box to mark the incident as complete and finished, and then post. If we are utilizing a Mesa Fire Transport unit, they will be the ones to complete the chart by posting and marking as finished. Because our validation score is not 100, it will not allow me to post and finish this chart. Moving further across the top, we have a print icon. Inside, we have multiple options. The courtesy notification will bring up a report that pulls information from your chart and lays it out in a neat and logical order for you to provide a concise courtesy notification. PDFs will generate the same reports, but they take slightly longer to generate. The CAD button is where we import CAD data. We already have CAD data on this call. We could reload the current, which would add any new CAD information. Or we could download a different call if we had accidentally imported the wrong one. The EKG button is how we will import Zoll-specific data directly into our chart. The transfer button is how we will transfer charts between units. This is one of the great features of Image Trend Elite Field. The medic unit and the fire unit can both work on the chart at the same time and utilize this transfer section to merge those charts later. We'll go through a more detailed example of this in a different video. Close will take you back to the dashboard. We can always reopen that chart. Let's look at a couple of the different types of buttons that we'll find within the chart. The first are the large, easy tap buttons, like so. We also have a timestamp button. And as we click that, it will date and timestamp something specifically. If you enter into this field by clicking on it, it will also give you an option on the left-hand side to adjust that information. You've got options at the top to adjust to current time, and for later sections of the chart, you could base it off of your on-scene time, patient arrival time, or destination arrival. You can also easily adjust by clicking on the plus or minus, and you can add or subtract time in larger intervals. If I come over to the patient information section, we have a negative button that will give us an unable to obtain or not applicable option. We also have a side menu button. Anytime you press one of these, all of the drop-down selections will show up on the left-hand side. You can scroll and select them, or you can search for their value here, and it will automatically filter the search results. Those same options are available in the drop-down menu, and you can also type to filter in this field. One of the other field types we have is the Add button, and this will allow us to add additional sets of the same type of value. The other area where you may use this plus Add button is under Incident Crew Info. This information will be imported when you download the CAD data, and it is tied to Telestaff. That said, there may be times where this information is still not accurate. So you may have to remove someone by clicking on the X, and then add a new member, either through the drop-down or the side menu, and then you can select whoever is appropriate to have on this call. Finally, you can flow through the chart by selecting each different section, or you'll notice that at the bottom of each section there's a next button that you can tap, and it will take you to the next subsection or to the next primary section. That's the basic layout, navigation, and buttonology for Image Trend Elite Field.